In this video, we're going to show you how you can get the most out of your Lightroom presets. So when Tribe Photo Co. asked us to take a look at the new Wolfpack collection, we thought it'd be a great idea to show you how we make adjustments to Lightroom presets to work in many different kinds of conditions. So you may be familiar with Tribe. It's another division of Red Leaf Studios, who owns Tribe Red Leaf and Tribe Archipelago. Anyways, enough talking, let's get started. So I pulled in a photo Rachel took while in the Faroe Islands a couple years ago, and to start, I'm going to apply each preset to this photo to find the one that I think works best on this. .04 looks the most lit, so I'll go ahead and apply that. Since it's foggy and I don't have a lot of highlights to preserve, I'm going to lift them to brighten things up a bit. I also want to see more details in the midground where the house is, so I'll raise the shadows up to around 75. The other thing I like to do is enable profile corrections. You can see it instantly brightens things up a lot, so I would recommend trying this out before adjusting your exposure. I'll just bring the vignetting back a little to put the focus on our subject. I like the grain it adds for this one because I think it fits the overall mood and feel for this image, so I don't need to make any adjustments there. This one's ready for the fridge. Alright, so I'm now going to work on a photo we took at Angel's Rest in Oregon with our friends Katie and Joe. I like the 05 preset on this one. All I'm going to do is pull the highlights down a bit and raise the shadows. Once again, I'll enable profile corrections and I'll leave the vignetting as is. But I do want to pull back the grain just a little. Like the first photo, we have an overcast lighting situation, so just a few simple tweaks and we are all good, fam. For this drone photo at Venice Beach, I'm going to add the 03 preset. I'm going to raise the highlights this time, around +9 should do it. I'll also lift the shadows a fair amount. Down in the hue section, I'll use the target adjustment circle and grab a section of sand to adjust the hue. I want the sand to look a little more yellow-orange. Now I'll use the adjustment circle, but this time for saturation. I want to lower the saturation of the sand just a little. A final tweak to the orange saturation, and that should be good. Lastly, I'll just raise the saturation of my entire image. Alright, so I have a photo I took of Taking Back Sunday, and I'm going to apply the 06 preset. I'll start by raising the highlights and lifting the shadows. I also want to add some clarity to the image to bring in a little more grit. I don't really like the hue of this blue, so I'm going to drag the blue hue slider to the left toward aqua. Now you can see there's a few can lights that are looking a little off. I'm just going to lift the aqua luminance to fix it. Now the blue is a little overwhelming, so I'm going to pull the saturation back on that. And bring down the saturation for the entire image as well. Now I'll enable profile corrections and pull the vignetting back to around 80. I'll also lower the grain amount, and that's it. Now I can toss that up on Instagram and watch those crispy likes roll in. Now let's take a look at a flat lay food styling shot Rachel took. I'm going to apply the 01 preset. I'll knock the highlights down a touch so the bowl of flour retains detail. I'll lift the shadows as usual and then bump up the whites a bit. I'll also bring the saturation down to -10. Now the marble slab is looking a little too blue, so I'll grab my trusty target adjustment circle for saturation and click and drag down on a spot on the marble. I also want to warm it up a little in the shadows, so in the split toning section, I'll make the shadow saturation 15. Now I'll finish it up by adding profile corrections and lowering the grain amount to 11. Then make sure you bake the cake before eating. Now we have a dance floor reception photo from a wedding we did on New Year's Eve for a super cool couple. I want to make this one black and white, so I'll add the 08 preset. It's a little dark, but don't despair. I'll raise the highlights and then head down to the black and white mix, where we normally find our HSL sliders. Since I want their faces to be brighter, and that's typically the orange hue, I'll raise the level on the orange slider. Then of course, we'll enable profile corrections and slightly adjust our vignette. I'll lower the grain amount again, and it's ready to be texted to the happy couple on their honeymoon. With this next photo, I'll just apply the 07 preset. Enable profile corrections and call it a day. I love that this preset gives the shot a vintage feel. The sky is a little more gray than white, but the blacks are still lit AF. Last but not least, I'll apply the O2 preset to this night shot at Yosemite. I'll lift the highlights because apparently I have this compulsion to always make adjustments to the highlights no matter what. One thing I like to do with night photos is add in some dehazing. This really makes the stars pop out on the image. I don't want much grain in this photo, so I'll turn that down. Now I want the mid and foreground to be a little brighter, so I'll use a graduated filter with the exposure raised 0.5. I'll drag up from the bottom of the screen and then bump up the highlights too. To make the stars pop even more, I'll add another graduated filter on the top, lowering the exposure and adding in a little more dehaze.
We hope this gives you some insight into how you can adjust presets yourself to get them to work in just about any situation. If you guys like these presets and want to pick them up for yourself, check out the link in the description. And we do want to note that Tribe donates a percentage of all of their profits to organizations that help protect and preserve the environment, so that's super cool. Thanks, and we'll see you Monday. Carl.